Welcome to the Plant Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
The tranquil, soothing, natural sound of flowing water. Listening to it has been shown to lower your heart rate and blood pressure and generally relax your whole body. Combining the magical sound of cascading water with the beauty of plants, Hydria Life will now enable you to use those same health and well-being effects at home or in the garden. Get 10% off their rechargeable Hydria fountain at hydrialife.com. All you need to do is quote the code PLANT24 when ordering.
Hi everyone, it's Ellen Mary here. Welcome to the Plant Based Podcast. We have another brilliant re-release of an episode for today's new episode. This goes way back some series to when Michael and I visited the well-known wellness guru, Liz Earle. Yes, we actually went to Liz Earle MBE's studio in Barnes in London, and we chatted all things wellness and mainly to do with kind of plants in our diet and what's healthy and good for us. And she was an absolute dream to chat with. It was a beautiful studio in a lovely cottage. Of course, if you don't know Liz, you must know Liz. But if you don't, she has a skincare company called Liz Earle Beauty. She's written, I mean, gosh, so many books, over 35 books on beauty, nutrition and well-being. She's regularly on TV. She has a bi-monthly magazine called Liz Earle Wellbeing, and also a fair trade jewellery brand. She is full of really good informed information about wellness. And we chose this episode as a listener favourite. So we're revisiting it again, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Okay, so we're here today in a very cosy London cottage with a name that you may recognise. This is Liz Earle, and we're really honoured to have her on the podcast. She's a very well-known well-being entrepreneur, and we're going to talk to her about her history, how she came to be the wonderful woman that she is today, and kind of all of your story and what you're up to now as well.
Well, welcome, guys. Nice
Thank
to have
you. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to put this out there right now, but you are a little bit of a hero of mine. So, you know, I was just going to say that now.
Thank you.
And then I won't nervously giggle anymore.
And we also need to set the scene because it's a really beautiful kind of like muse type house.
Yeah,
with
it's
gorgeous furnishings.
Well, thank you. It's a Victorian artist studio, and actually it's a pair of studios that I was able to put together. And because we work from here, so we do a lot of photography and filming, and we've got a little garden outside, which you will have seen as you walk through. And it's just a lovely base. It's a really quiet oasis in South London. So we've got the parks nearby, the rivers. And it just feels very creative, so I love it.
As soon as I walked in, that's exactly what I thought. I just thought this is a creative space, you know. It's just beautiful. I saw the camellias as well.
Yeah,
I saw at the front and actually round the road. So pretty.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I'm liking the pink sofa. Very much.
Velvet. I like fabrics and I like tactile things. So yes, lots of velvets and soft throws and cushions and things.
Yeah, amazing.
I should have worn my black velvet sweater.
Then you could have just sunk right into
it. Be like Velcro. But take us right back. So was your love of plants and well-being, was it fixed in from a very early age? Tell us about your childhood.
Yes, I think my father was an admiral in the Navy, so he was away at sea a lot. And when he came home, the garden was really his sanctuary, if you like. It was his refuge, and he would make physical contact with the land. And he's a very practical man, and he likes growing plants that do things. So he likes growing the tastiest broad bean, or the herb that will turn into a tea, or the best scented rose, or whatever it is. So I think I used to connect with him in the garden. I can remember pottering about, even from a really young age, having kind of toy spades and trowels and things, and just being encouraged to love plants and connect with him and chat, and it was our bit of kind of me time together. So I guess I just took that forward into life as having an affinity with plants and loving them, loving growing them, and loving watching what they could do for you.
That's interesting. Another guest on the podcast who says their love of plants goes back to being, a child.
Yeah.
There's almost everybody says that. There's some connection.
It's so
to being
important.
young.
And now, as a mother, I've got 5 children, and each of them I've tried to say, let's get outside. Or even when we lived in London, but we now live on a farm in the countryside, so it's much easier to do that. But even in London, it was very much about growing, whether it was cress on blotting paper or then having little pots in window boxes. And it's just trying to get that sense that you can grow anything. I mean, even here in London, we grow lettuces in pots for summer salads and that kind of thing. There's an awful lot that you can do, as you know, in a very small space. You don't need to have a large garden to enjoy it.
So what happened next? You've created this incredible well-being empire, and you've been through so much in order to get to this point now. Like, how did it start?
I've been very fortunate, I think, because I've been working now for 35 years or so. And I started as a junior on women's magazines when I was, 19, 20. And it was at a time when beauty and health were first beginning to get linked together, and there were these extraordinary new people out there called nutritionists and complementary therapists and all these kind of unheard of new ways of life, ways of living. And up until then, there really hadn't been anything. The only thing talking about health was doctors and medicine. And so because I was the youngest on the magazine and I'd just come in as a junior, they said, oh, well, you can go off and talk to this strange nutrition person, or you can go off and talk to this, massage healer or whatever it is, reflexologist or acupuncturist. And for me, it was that massive light bulb moment. I just loved it. I loved the fact that we can, to a certain extent, control our destiny and our well-being through making simple changes, things that we eat, things that we do, the way we live our life. And so I wrote for magazines. I very quickly moved into writing books. I was lucky. I was mentored by editors who encouraged me to write. And these days, my kids look at me and they say, well, how did you write that without the internet? They just look at me as if I was completely... I said, like, were you in a cave or something?
Or a library.
Yes, I said,
public library.
Do you know, we used to have these things called libraries, and I used to go to the British Library, and we also had things called telephones, and I would actually use them to ring people.
And speak to them.
Yes, or actually, even go and see them sometimes. I mean, I know
Can
it
you
just sounds
imagine that?
way out there. and actually, that old school form of journalism I still encourage with my team today. I mean, coming full circle, doing a magazine, because you can't just pick up all your information from the University of Google. It's very dangerous to do that. And very often when you go and talk to a researcher or an academic and you say, well, I read this study online, and they'll say, that was completely misinterpreted. What actually happened is this. So I started writing books because I loved the writing and the research. Then I got a bit of a name for myself, I guess, through writing books, and then started in daytime television. So I started with Richard and Judy on This Morning, 31 years ago, and went up, for a few days and ended up staying for about 4.5 years. Then moved from there to the BBC and hosted the first ever programme on beauty called Beauty Wise. Then moved to GMTV, worked with Lorraine for a number of years, and Eamon and Anthea and all that crew at that time. Then went to the afternoon schedules and had a series called Liz Earle's Lifestyle, which ran in the afternoon on ITV. And it was around that time, I was still writing books and doing radio and things, that my girlfriend said, you know about plants, you know about skin, and women know you and trust you from the telly. Why don't you have a beauty line? And I thought, well, maybe a little sideline, could be quite interesting, because there are plants that I think do great things for the skin, and I was quite keen to encourage that, because the only other person really doing that back then was kind of Anita Roddick and The Body Shop, and there weren't really any of these lovely high-end niche brands that we have now. So we started it, and of course it was just a massive success, which obviously in one way was amazing and brilliant, but it really pulled me away from my original authentic passions, which are about writing and researching about well-being and living well. So we had 15 amazing years, and we built the beauty company into really what became one of Britain's biggest independent beauty brands. And then we sold it back in 2010. And I stayed in the brand for a little while, and then realised that actually my passions were research and writing and books and doing my own magazine. So I'm thrilled now to be able to do that. So it's an interesting situation to be in, because I'm kind of part of a startup. I mean, you can see here we're in small studios. I've got a small team. It's very new, it's quite forward going, and we're breaking new ground with all these new things like podcasts and YouTube and all those new kind of disruptor technologies that we didn't have years ago. And yet I've been doing it for 35 years. So it's really nice to come into something and have a history and authenticity and a bit of knowledge, rather than just be a kind of newbie and just kind of picking it up just because it's a fad. That's not where I am at all.
Yeah. It's incredible when you think right back to the beginning, how you were sent off to write these articles about, people and products that everyone thought was just way out there and crazy. And that literally set you up for all of your career. Yeah. Isn't that, it's just, I find it incredible how things like that happen.
It's about, I think, having an open and an inquiring mind, and when doors open, being prepared to walk through them. Yeah. And for me, I had very bad skin as a teenager. I had a lot of trouble with eczema. And back then it was just conventional steroid treatments and not much else. And I had heard through one of the nutritionists that I interviewed that if I looked at essential fatty acids in my diet, in particular things like GLA from evening primrose and starflower from borage seed, that would help. And so I did that for myself, and I found that my own skin dramatically improved. And so my first book was actually all about plant oils. It was called Vital Oils. And it was written at a time when everybody was cutting oil out of their diet. So you have people like dear old Rosemary Conley and the hip and thigh diet, which was all about going low fat or no fat. And of course the problem, if you take good fat out of your diet, is your skin falls apart, because we need good fats to make the membrane structures around skin cells, plus all our hormones and all the other things. So I'm really thrilled now to see the kind of pendulum swing back in favour of good quality oils and fats. We're talking about avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil and high fat foods. You can go the extreme and talk about keto or whatever, but the focus needs to be on good fat in the diet and low sugar. We know that sugar is the kind of dietary baddie rather than fats.
I'm just like doing this because if I eat too much sugar, I get spots here.
Well, it can cause inflammation, and that's a known response. The glycation within the skin. So I try and eat low sugar but high fat always.
Okay.
I could check my skin now. We'll check our skin here now, Liz.
That's so interesting.
You look fabulous.
You do look fabulous. And also, I'm genuinely, you look fabulous,
well,
Liz.
thanks.
You've just said you've been working in the industry for such a long time. You have 5 children.
I do.
You look incredible.
Oh, thank you.
So you are a walking advertisement for everything that you do. You are proof that living that way works.
I think over the years I've found some strategies that really do work, genuinely work, and I think that's what gets me up in the morning. That's why I'm excited with my work in Wellbeing, because there are things that we can all do that will make a difference. The book before last that I wrote was about gut health, Good Gut Guide. And that's because every medical researcher that I was talking to, whether it was a cancer specialist or a mental health expert talking about, depression and anxiety, or an immunologist or a rheumatologist talking about joint health, whatever it was all coming back to the gut. And people were saying, oh, well, of course, we're looking at the microbiome, we're looking at beneficial bacteria. And I was really fascinated by this and the fact that we can add these beneficial bacteria into our diet. And so I swear by the 5Ks. I try and run a 5K, but these are different 5Ks. So this is kombucha, which hopefully...
Love it.
You love kombucha. Yeah.
Well, I was making kombucha literally 30 years ago in a bucket, putting it in the airing cupboard, and my family were going, what on earth is that alien in the cupboard? And then I kind of got out of the habit and stopped. And of course, then it's resurged, and now there's always got a SCOBY on the go. Kefir, obviously.
Oh, kefir, yeah. My partner's Polish, and he swears by
totally.
kefir. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really,
But you need a good one because
origin.
they start to have more mainstream ones that are too sweet and they're just not the same.
Shouldn't really put so much sugar in it. Yeah. You don't need sugar in
it's so good. And you can almost, I know it sounds gross, but you can feel it working as well.
I think it's healthily addictive.
You've got to try it.
I'm really sorry, but what is it? I don't know.
So kefir is like a super yogurt.
Oh, okay.
So it's a fermented milk, and it originated in the Caucasus, actually, with goat's milk. And it has billions, probably, of beneficial bacteria. I mean, it is very, very active. And you can make it yourself. You can make it from kefir grains. And you can brew it literally overnight. It's a bit like yogurt. It ferments overnight, but it's like yogurt with Superman underpants. I mean, it is just
cool.
like...
I like that.
And the real traditional ones are almost a little bit fizzy in their feeling
fizzy,
as well when you drink them.
Yeah,
they're amazing.
And it's really helpful for digestive issues. So I did a podcast actually with a lady who founded a company called Nourish Kefir, and she cured her long-term Crohn's with it, Crohn's disease. And she was given some. She was on bed rest, having had this high-powered job in the city. And she had a Polish friend come to visit her, brought kefir and said, I really think you should try this. And literally after one glassful, she started to feel different.
Wow.
And so she became so evangelical about it that she started a whole kefir company. So kombucha, kefir, kimchi, which is the Korean pickle, little teaspoon.
You've got to have a separate kimchi fridge though, haven't you?
Well,
it really honks, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to keep the lid on the jar.
I always get told off when I've got it at home. It's like,
It can.
like kimchi.
And kraut, sauerkraut, that which is with the other one, that's of course very German and has lots of beneficial bacteria. Again, super easy to make. Yeah. Chopped up pickled cabbage.
Yeah, I've never made it. I know it's easy, but I've never done it.
It's you just shred a cabbage, you chuck in some other things maybe for flavour, like some fennel or a few dill seeds or something, and you cover it in salty water, so it's marinating in this brine, and you leave it. So you've got to have the courage of your convictions to leave it for a couple of weeks and let it kind of bubble and ferment. And my fridge is full of stuff that has got sticky labels on saying, this has not gone off, do not throw it out, okay? Otherwise, my kids will go through...
It does go off. How will they tell the difference?
Oh, no, but you can. When something goes off, it goes brown and manky and it smells bad. So it's very obvious, or it's got green whiskers on it.
Portions of bolognese,
That is very different. And then the 5th K is a bit of a cheat because it's kamut, which is actually sourdough bread.
Okay.
So it's not really a K, but its traditional name is kamut. But sourdough, again, I was looking at some studies just the other day showing that even those with serious gluten intolerances can tolerate some kinds of sourdough, and they're doing a lot of research in that. So it's the whole area of fermentation is amazing. So I guess in answer to your question, one of the things that I'm really keen on is fermented foods. And then I sorted my hormones out a few years ago. My last book was The Good Menopause Guide. So I take HRT, and estrogen is super important. That, of course, comes from a plant, from the wild yam plant. So we're back to our lovely plants, doing things and being good for our bodies. And then because of that, I got more energy because I was able to, my joints didn't ache anymore because I was replacing my estrogen in them. And that enabled me to take up running. So I go for my morning run, and that again is just so good for well-being, mental health, physical health. And I prioritise my sleep. I'm absolutely fanatical.
It's easy not to, isn't it?
It's so important.
Yeah.
It regulates everything, mental health, immunity, skin.
How many hours do you recommend per night?
I try and get 7.5 hours actually asleep.
Okay.
Because what they're saying is that our sleep cycles are about 90 minutes. And that's, when you're in a sleep cycle, you go through this curve and you go into REM, which is your rapid eye movement sleep when you dream. And you get these different stages of sleep that are basically when your brain is clearing out all the bad stuff. It processes stuff during the day, so it's all to do with memory. It's like doing your filing, sorting away all the stuff that's happened and processing it. And a whole sleep cycle is an hour and a half. And you should ideally get 5 of those a night. So that's your 7.5 hours. And then if it takes a while to drift off to sleep or to stir in the mornings, you're kind of looking at an 8-hour window. And I've got this app, actually, I use called Sleep Cycle, which is really good because it switches itself off. I don't know how it works, but it kind of monitors you at night. And then you click on it in the morning and it just shows the rhythm of your sleep and how you were sleeping, and make sure that you have blackout, that you've got... I sleep with earplugs so I don't get woken up with anything.
I really need something like that because I don't sleep. I go to sleep really easily, but I wake up in the evening. I'll just put this out there. I need to go for a wee approximately 3 times, and then I find it really difficult to go back
really
to sleep.
Hard. You should look at your estrogen levels. Have an estrogen check.
That's a whole other conversation.
Because my mum, I just put my mum back on HRT, aged 80, and I said to her after a few weeks, how are you feeling? Thinking that she'd go, wow, I feel amazing. It's so different. And she said, I feel okay, thanks, darling. And I was thinking, I do not feel radically different. And she said, well, the only thing that I do have noticed is that I don't get up 5 times a night now.
Yeah. Well, I used to get up 5 times. Yeah. No, it's 3, so it's getting better.
We can fix you. Sure.
Thank you. Being fixed would be great. You've obviously mentioned food such a lot and your love for plants. But I take it from some of the foods that you mentioned, you don't eat a plant-based diet. Or you do?
I eat lots of plants, but I'm not vegan, no. In fact, I live on a farm, and I'm a great believer in regenerative farming, regenerative agriculture. So I eat grass-fed meat. I'm a great believer in eating things like British beef and things like kefir, for example. We know that kefir really has to be made with an animal milk. So it doesn't need to be cow's milk, but you can use goat's milk or sheep's milk. And that's because the proteins wrap themselves around the bacteria as they pass through the digestive tract. Because anything that we put into our bodies has to survive unbelievably strong stomach acids. So to get through to the lower intestine, you need to have a protective mechanism. So yes, you can make what they call kefir from a plant milk, from coconut milk or whatever, but it won't be as effective as something that has the animal proteins to help protect it. And in fact, they're now saying legally it shouldn't really be called kefir because it doesn't have the same efficacy. It should be like a plant-based probiotic juice rather than a pure kefir. So it's really interesting. But I believe in balance, and I believe in having a balanced diet and in making sure that you are really well protected, with your iron, your B12, your choline, your taurine, your creatine, all these different iodine, all of these different amino acids and things.
About the balance.
Yeah, and just making sure, if you are purely vegan, that you are seriously looking at your supplements and making sure they're absorbable. For example, brain fats, we need EPA and DHA. DHA is only from a marine source. So people who take flaxseed supplements, for example, aren't getting their conversion of the DHA. You need to have the supplements from an algae.
Are you young, Ellen?
I take supplements. Yes. I take B12.
You're getting your algae?
I take a multivitamin, and I take vitamin D. And why I take vitamin D because I was told that helps to absorb calcium. Yeah. And for other reasons that we may have touched on then, I need to be doing that. And yes, that's it.
Yeah, well, I would really look at getting a DHA supplement. So you're getting your omega-3s, but it needs to be an algae-sourced DHA.
Okay. Thanks.
We've got a lot of information online, because actually my senior health and beauty writer and podcast producer is vegan.
Right.
And she wrote a very interesting article that went out in January for Veganuary, actually on the dangers of being vegan. And she's very much into making sure that you get your healthy brain fats, because if you don't, you're setting yourself up for issues like anxiety and depression and actually insomnia. So we can talk offline.
This has been very useful already.
So, like when you're at home, are you growing lots of herbs and remedies yourself to then kind of thrash away out in the kitchen in the pestle and mortar? Is that how it works?
I do grow my own herbs. I don't do tinctures, although I do make an elderberry cordial. So I'm a great believer
in... It's so sugary though.
It is quite sugary.
Yeah.
I make them lower sugar.
Not being judgy.
Well, I'm quite defensive now. Yes, it does have a little bit of sugar in it.
It's about the balance.
It is the balance, but it's quite concentrated. So you can get supplements like sambucol, for example, which is elderberry, and they've shown that it can help reduce the severity of colds and flu. And I like taking echinacea at this time of year. I use ginger. I make ginger teas, ginger and lemon tea. I do grow my herbs and then I dry them and then just chop them up and either freeze them or put them in sealed bags and bring them out.
It's so easy to do, isn't it?
It's so easy and it's so cheap, because otherwise you're paying a fortune for these little packets, which
and
are
they don't
often
keep very long either.
They don't, and they may have been in storage for ages before you get them.
When I was a teenager, I was running a little mail order herb nursery, and I was also doing all of these little kind of concoctions at the weekends. And I remember like grinding down dandelion roots to make coffee as a substitute. I made scented geranium leaf sorbet as well once.
How delicious.
Was this. No, it was weird.
Was it not?
Turned out really odd.
It wasn't good.
Well, for some reason it was bright blue because I put too much colouring in, and then it was too sweet, and it was very. But I was always doing these weird experiments and just having fun, and that was my childhood.
I
really.
love it, and my kids love it, and we, I don't use sugar much in cooking, but I use it to make like a hand scrub, which is really great if you've been gardening. You could just mix a bit of granulated sugar with some oil, rapeseed oil or groundnut oil is really good, and some lovely scented essential oils. Super easy, great for your feet, coming up to the summer, just to get your feet sandal ready.
Mine are not ready yet. Mine are only ever in boots and gardening boots. They need to be very ready soon.
Get scrubbing.
I'm a boy, so we can have ugly feet, it doesn't matter.
Anyway, there's a lot of plant talk already. I love it. So, thank you. That's the end of part 1. But in part 2, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Wellbeing magazine that you've got you've got out as well. There's one sitting in front of me, and I can already see loads of pieces in there that I already need to read. And of course, a little bit more about plants.
Yeah, and a lot of take-homes as well. Things that you can try at home and mix up yourself, and a few bits of inspiration for your own well-being.
Okay, so we are back here in this super cosy studio. My feet are really toasted by the fire.
Oh, good.
With Liz Earle, and we've already heard so much about your love of plants and how you've got to where you've got to today, and it's inspirational. So in this part, we're just going to be talking a little bit more about Wellbeing and the magazine, and talking about maybe the future of plants and wellbeing, and where perhaps it's going to go as well, because I think that's pretty interesting. We're talking about it more now, aren't we? Yeah. Which is great. So we just, whilst we paused off recording, we were talking about supplements, especially for anyone who's on a plant-based diet or who's vegan, and you suggested some vitamins that we definitely need to, or minerals that we need to ensure that we are taking.
Definitely. Any of the nutrients that are only found naturally in animal produce, so things like iodine, for example, obviously B12, you'd need, to check your iron that it's absorbable. I think the omega-3 fish oils are also really important, so your EPA and DHA, so DHA being the main one, and making sure it comes from an algae source, because it is only fish-based. So a lot of people will buy theirs from flaxseed, but it doesn't convert properly in the brain. So I think we need to just be aware that low levels, restricted eating and having low levels of a variety of nutrients, you've got all the amino acids as well, taurine and creatine, can lead to anxiety and insomnia and low mood. So it's really important that you are protecting yourself and that you read up. And for anybody who excludes any major food group, you need to make sure that you're replacing it with something good.
I guess that no matter what diet you choose to live on. So, you know, mine is plant-based, or if you eat meat, there's always the possibility that you're not eating the right foods anyway. Do you know what I mean? So someone who is eating meat could still be deficient in something, perhaps, because they're
absolutely.
not.
And I think the key thing is to cook from scratch. So try and have as little out of a packet as possible, and as little processed as possible. I'm a great believer in regenerative farming. I'm a great believer in local and sustainable. I think that when we look globally at the planet, you know, shipping in avocados and almonds and, you know, all these things from all over the world is just not sustainable. We need to be looking, we need to be supporting British farmers and growers and seeing what we can buy locally, but also, and looking at the use of water. You know, I did a podcast recently about avocados. A single avocado is 320 litres of water. And there's you know, particularly when they're coming from South America with Mexico, there's huge issues with all the drug barons and the cartels.
Yeah, I was reading about that recently.
You know, so there's
a series on Netflix as well.
There was Rotten.
Lots of
That's
Rotten was the one.
Amazing.
About avocados.
I just find us humans can't ever create a balance. It's always too much of one thing, too much of one thing. Like, why can't we just have a balance with everything?
just live in harmony
Anyway.
And I think be aware that when we're eating, it's better if we can to get all our nutrients from food rather than from supplements. I mean, supplements are obviously synthetic and they're processed and packaged, and so you've got all that kind of sustainability going on around it. But also, micronutrients are often bound up in foods. So, you know, it's not just isolating a single ingredient like vitamin C, for example. If you eat an orange, then you're getting all the bioflavonoids and all the other things with the vitamin C that buffer it and help it become more absorbable and more available in the body. So wherever possible, I think try and eat the actual real food, as little processed as possible. And my mantra is really to try and only eat things that my grandmother would recognise. So I think that's quite a
Lots
good
of
thing.
plants.
But also,
But
if you are on a more limited diet or a different lifestyle, like vegan, for example, you will need to rely on supplements.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How do you make sure you're getting good supplements?
Well, I think you need to read up on the subject. I mean, hopefully if you decide to be quite strict and quite restricted, then you're not just going to do it without thinking quite carefully about it and actually read up. And I think very often you get what you pay for. Good quality supplements are unfortunately more expensive.
How can you tell the difference? Do you need to look for like milligrams, or how does it work? Because if I open Amazon and I'm looking you know, for vitamin B12 or something, how do I know which is a good one?
Well, I think first of all is look up the research around B12, because there are lots of different types of vitamins. So you need to look at the actual type. For example, with vitamin D, you've got D2, D3, D4. You know, it's the D3 form that you need. Look at certainly the amounts. It's a very controversial area because there are RDAs, the recommended daily amount or daily allowance, but that's to stop deficiency. That's not necessarily to create health. So, for example, if you look at something like vitamin C, which we know can stop certain viruses in their tracks, but actually the RDA may be quite low depending on who you are, whether you're talking about an adult, a child, a male, female, you know, they all vary. But you might only be talking, 60, 80 micrograms, and yet you can get supplements that are 1,000 micrograms. So it's, it is controversial. I think if you are following any form of restricted diet, it probably is worth speaking to a qualified nutritionist who can really guide you through that maze and give you a personal approach.
I just love that, like you talk about vitamin C, you get so much of that from plants, they provide us with so much. And we still don't even really understand all of it. We're going to find out so much more.
Nutrients this is why obviously, the destruction of rainforests and things is so critical, because we're losing whole species that may well be so valuable. If you look at all our serious medication, digitalis from foxgloves, you've got coartem, artemisium, malaria treatment from a chrysanthemum-like plant. These are such important ingredients that we're finding from the natural world.
So much. I was reading just a year or two ago, some researchers from Kew had found a new plant, I think it was in West Africa, and they've named it the Kindia gangam, which I believe was the village nearby. But when they brought it back to Kew and researched into it, they found it has possible cancer-fighting properties.
Yeah.
You know, and if they hadn't discovered that, or it's become extinct,
who knows?
Who would know it was there? You know,
Yeah.
so it's so important that we preserve the environment so much.
Really.
Yeah, so the place that you really collect together all of this knowledge and share it with your followers is the Wellbeing magazine and the website.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about that. When did it start? What came first, the magazine or the website?
It did. Well, I guess the website started because I thought I'd just like an online platform to put all this information out. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do an online magazine or a download. And I love Christmas, so I know it's not very seasonal, but you know, Christmas for me is a real highlight of the year. I start it in about September.
Wow.
And I got lots
I hate
of
Christmas. I
really.
need tips on that.
Oh, you're the
I'm no
Grinch. No, I love it, and I love passing down family recipes and things. So I said to my eldest daughter, who used to help me digitally, can you make a download for Christmas, like a magazine? And can we sell it maybe on the Apple Store? And she looked into it and she said, oh, yes, you know, we can do that. But they won't take a one-off. You have to do a series. And I said, well, how many do we have to do? And she said, well, 4 is the minimum. So I said, well, what happens if we just do 1 and we don't do any more? And she said, oh, that's okay. You can cancel it. Just do the 1. So I said, that's what we'll do then. We'll just do this lovely Christmas
What a great loophole.
so that's what you think. So we did this in all our naivety, and it sold really well. And we came to January and we thought, right, okay, you know, let's have a look at the statistics and let's close it down. And what we didn't realise was that most people had subscribed to all 4 for the year. So we were then faced with this quandary: what do we do?
Pressure.
Do we, we either disappoint everybody, or refund everybody, or we do the 4. So we thought, well, actually, spring's really nice because you've got Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Easter and all these things that we can celebrate and talk about feasting and plants and well-being. So we did the spring one. And then all our readers were contacting us saying, we love this, but do you think you could print it? Because it would just be so much nicer if we can physically have it in print. So kind of we went counter-culture. I thought everyone was going online and going digital. We started online, and then we had to kind of retrofit it into the printed page.
Oh,
and
you
then,
can't beat.
I think
I don't
paper
think
will
you
always
can.
be king.
Absolutely. I've just picked your magazine up, which is here on the table, and nothing beats holding this.
It's tangible.
And I just think you absorb it more. I don't know, it makes you relax because you're reading.
You're not looking at a screen.
You're just relaxing.
You're switching off.
It's just, I don't think I could ever replace books and magazines with online only.
Well, the other thing that I like about it as a journalist and as a writer, I'm sure you've had this experience where you've been online and you've looked at something and it's not right, and you can immediately change it. You kind of go into the back end or back of house or whatever, and you fix it straight away. And that leads to lazy, sloppy journalism because there's always that, it doesn't matter if it's not quite right because we can fix it later. If you commit something to print, that magazine that you're holding will more as likely not still be here in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And if it's not absolutely true, you can wave it in front of me and you can go, Liz, you said this.
Yeah,
so it's the same with a book.
You can't rush ahead and just change it. Yeah.
You can't. So you have to be absolutely sure. And we put on the front cover, Wellbeing Wisdom You Can Trust. And I say to my young team here, who are all kind of millennials and don't remember life before Google and before online, so just be really, really careful with every single word because it must be true, highly researched and true. Oh, you've come across Sarah Raven in the magazine.
I've already found the gardening.
Yeah, she is our gardening guru, our regular correspondent, and I just love her being in the garden with Sarah.
I have many dahlias from Sarah Raven's website.
Who does not have many
I think
dahlias?
she's helped their revival.
She is the dahlia queen.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm just flicking through the magazine, and so much of it is actually about plants. So there's walks in nature. You've got the gardening.
Yeah, but plants are fundamental to well-being. We eat plants. We live with plants. We want plants in our homes. We can use as a whole piece on natural cleaning in your home using plants. We have a section at the beginning with a botanical drawing, and we have a lovely botanical illustrator and looking at the medicinal use and history of certain plants and how you can bring that back into life at home. The beauty section will very often feature fragrances based on plants or plant dyes. I mean, even something when we're talking about hormones, for example, you know, coming back to estrogen and HRT, it's plant-based. It comes from the wild yam plant. So I think whichever way you look, it's plants,
all
isn't
comes
it?
back to plants, and we love that. So I'm flicking through the magazine, and it looks to me like it's very much aimed at women. Is that the target audience?
It is. I mean, we do have guys who read it, obviously, and recipes. Everybody eats. Hopefully, everybody gardens. So there's plenty there. But I guess it is unashamedly really for midlife women. I mean, a lot of mums will buy it and they'll share it with daughters, or they'll take it to their mum. It kind of goes across all generations. But we don't do very much fashion. We don't do any salacious gossip. We don't, we're not into that kind of stuff. It's just, I guess it's very wholesome, really. And the travel is all about travelling to somewhere where you might enjoy for your well-being. You might go on a creative drawing course, or you might go walking in the fens, or you might go, there's a whole thing here about Japan, for example, and about the Japanese culture.
Yeah, I actually noticed in the back here, is it wabi-sabi?
Yeah.
Wabi-sabi, how do you pronounce it? Yeah, in the back here. Taking time just to slow down, take a moment, look around, just to be.
Just to be. Really important, that kind of mindful connection.
Yeah.
And sitting and contemplating. We don't do that enough, do we? That's the whole thing on natto. So we were talking about gut food earlier.
That's so embarrassing to eat. Have you ever eaten it?
Why is it embarrassing?
It's disgusting.
It's one of the most embarrassing foods to eat in Japan, because you pick it up and it's like mozzarella and it's stringy.
Yeah,
but the string never breaks. The first time I had it in this basement hall having breakfast, and it was just going everywhere, all over the tray. It was so shameful. I just had to run into the elevator.
I mean, you can literally go
with it all behind you.
Following you like an alien.
But it is, and they give that to foreigners to kind of like just have a laugh sometimes.
You got caught.
It's unbelievably good for you, but it tastes really rank.
Yeah, it's a weird taste.
It's like baked beans that have gone really, really bad.
No, it tastes like sock, let's be honest. If you imagine how a sock would taste.
A sock, but
Well, I have, Liz, and
and that's the taste, is it? Well, there you go. You've done both, so you can tell us.
But would you ever consider doing a title for men? Because my problem is, Men's Health magazine.
Yeah.
It's so kind of geared towards kind of like sporty straight men, which is kind of like people's lives aren't really like that, and they kind of assume everybody works in an office and wears a suit and tie, and that's not real life for a lot of guys. In the UK and in Europe.
But you should start it, because I think that there is real strength in being authentic. And for me, I am a midlife woman. I've got older kids. I've been on a journey with my own health and well-being. And I want to share that and be part of it. And I think that there's nothing like being passionate about something to being able to bring other people along with you. And so I think, if that's your bag, sorting out guys' well-being, then there is a big open space for you to go and be.
I just feel like a lot of it is very alienating. I think for you females, you've got a lot more out there.
There's a lot of choice, for sure.
Yeah.
You're very lucky. I hope you realise.
But having said that, women's magazines have been in a bit of a crisis. Many have folded, many have gone. We've lost many of the titles over the years.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's more and more online. So, if you look at a magazine that might focus on fashion and gossip, for example, you only have to flick online in the morning or on Instagram or wherever, and you've immediately got your news. You've got your bit of gossip. The Daily Mail online,
but it's
sidebar
trash.
Of shame or whatever. It is trash, and we don't look at it, obviously. But
every morning.
But it is there. But it means that if you're printing something, you're out of date before you've even printed the page. So I think the magazines that are doing well, my magazine is actually one of the very few on the newsstands that's thriving, because it has a very different tone of voice, and it's about living well, and it's quite kind of wholesome and good for you. And we don't try and be too newsy.
That's the key. Good for you. I think we are seeing a bit of a shift, aren't we?
We're all living longer, hopefully. That's statistically, we're living longer. And if we're going to have more years on our life, we want to have life in those years, because there's no point in just living an extra 10, 20 years and being in a mobile, decrepit heap that hasn't got all your marbles sitting in the corner. So, I want to hang on to all my faculties for as long as possible, physical and mental, and have an even better second half, actually. A lot of my work is about how do we make sure, particularly as women, because, women, let's face it, are usually the primary caregiver. They're the ones who will bring up children. They're often looking after older parents or other members of the family. And you get to that stage of life and you think, well, the kids have left home. I'm no longer perhaps looking after older relatives. What about me? Where is my time in all of this? And how do I make sure that I am best protected? And actually, you've got to look after the caregivers. Who cares for the caregivers? Because if you don't then look after yourself, how are you then able to help others?
And just before we move on and do a few take-homes, kind of, like for me, I loved plants when I was a kid, but it wasn't cool to like plants at that point. And it's so strange for me to see the change, and now everybody's crazy about plants and well-being, and kind of, you've obviously seen a similar change as well. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's great that everybody's got there? But it took them so long. Like, where have you been?
Totally. It's like that kind of pretty woman moment, isn't it? Walking down, where is it, Melrose Place or wherever, and just going, big mistake. All those people who kind of poo-pooed it before and said, oh, that's just a fad, that'll never last. And you go,
I never know whether to be happy or annoyed at them. I'm like, got here, but
I think you have to be generous in your spirit and just go, well done, guys, for finally.
Thanks for catching up. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I wrote my first book, which was all about the plant oils, as I mentioned. It was very much counterculture, and I was almost sued by a margarine manufacturer for daring to suggest that their hydrogenated, polyunsaturated, trans fat laden spread could potentially be damaging. And of course, years later, you buy all these spreads that say no trans fats, no, of course, we don't do that, and you think, well, you did, and you tried to take me to task for saying back then that it could potentially be unhealthy.
It's like the 80s into the 90s was a really fake world, wasn't it? It was very,
Gosh.
not really a lot, pushed in our faces that just wasn't good for us.
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful. Even today, there can be a lot of greenwashing and fakery around it. So it's really important to know where your trusted sources are for information.
Your magazine. So, the well-being guru that you are, do you have any tips for listeners to take home, kind of some easy tips for their own well-being, what they can do in their daily lives?
Well, I touched on sleep, and that is the fundamental.
Yes.
So, get yourself as good a mattress as you can. Make sure that you practice sleep hygiene. Switch all your screens off by 9 o'clock. No late night Insta scrolling, which I'm guilty of. It's my guilty pleasure. But it's, seriously, that light that comes from our screen is disrupting our pituitary gland. And our brains are wired so that when we see light, especially a bright light that's coming from a screen, it's thinking, it's daytime, it's time to get up and do stuff and be active. And actually, we need to be winding down. That's why it's great to have all your lights on dimmers, so you can start to dim stuff. Make sure that your bedroom is blacked out. If I travel with black gaffer tape that I can cover any little blinky LED lights that will subconsciously, even, they'll shine through your eyelids when they're closed. So it's really important that you have a blackout situation. And sound, I'm very sensitive to sound, so I sleep with earplugs. So just, keeping that sleep hygiene really, really going strongly. Very simple things, breathing. This is talking about sleep, that's free. The breath that we take, that's also free. And making sure that we breathe properly, taking some time to do mindful breathing. And I spend the first of 7 minutes of every day just doing some really simple meditation, contemplation, call it what you like, but it's just kind of waking up and just really concentrating on my breathing and thinking about the day ahead and just getting into the right frame of mind to step into that. Anxiety breathing is really good. So if you need to calm yourself down in a stressful situation, you need to exhale for longer than you inhale. So you can do like 7-11 breathing. So you breathe in for a count of 7 and then exhale for a count of 11. So, and that switches on your parasympathetic nervous system. It just calms you down, just takes the edge off something.
I don't know why, but I was just trying to do it. I'm listening to you.
I did it as well.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then out for 11. So that's a really, really simple, effective free, easy tip. The other thing that's really important, and it's an old chestnut really when it comes to health and well-being, is drink more water. I've got a jug which is, I think it's called Zero or Pure Zero, something like that, and it takes everything out of your water. It's an amazing thing. So I don't like buying bottled water, especially kind of single-use plastic bottles. I won't buy them. So water filters I think are very good. If you're living in an urban environment, the chances are that you've got quite a lot of chlorine in your water. It doesn't taste so great. So being able to filter it is a really good thing. And obviously in the summer we need to be drinking more water because we tend to lose more moisture. And a lot of our headaches actually come from dehydration. So if you get a headache, before you reach for the painkiller, have a really large glass of water, and the chances are that will
your brain has literally shrunk, isn't it? So it can't.
It's rattling
kind
around
of aching
there.
in the place.
You're like.
I always
most
tell
of the
people when they've got a
time.
headache, just drink a pint of water.
It's amazing how
But there's
effective
also
that can be.
I was told to massage here between
in your pressure point, between your thumb and where your thumb joins your index finger. Yeah, you can feel it's quite tender, that little spot. It's also quite good for nausea, for travel sickness.
Okay.
I love pressure points, actually. I love things like pressure point massage, reflexology. I don't know how it works, but it does definitely seem to work.
I love that so much of what we've talked about is actually free. It's there, it's in nature, it's breathing, it's the air, being around plants, eating plants, being outside, just taking moments for yourself. That's all free.
And 20 minutes outside is really good for your mental health. In Scotland, GPs are actually prescribing being outdoors as part of their
We need to do that
prescriptions.
here. We need to do that everywhere.
Totally.
Not today,
Getting
it's
out
raining.
for a walk. But even then, it doesn't matter if it's raining.
It should be good for
is
you.
it? And they've done studies looking at being out and looking at trees, looking at green stuff, and they've done studies with young kids, for example, with ADHD, and showing that if you take them out of an urban playground environment and put them in a park, that difference between 20 minutes in a concrete playground or 20 minutes in a park massively improves concentration and reduces acts of aggression and attention deficit. So there's so much we can do, isn't there, from nature? And again, these things are free.
Exactly. Oh, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much. I feel very calm. You've made me feel like I'm not a calm person. You've made me feel very calm.
It's the breathing. Let's just breathe.
Let's hope it lasts for the rest of the week because we've got more work to do.
And get on the kefir.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. I'll stop fangirling now.
The tranquil, soothing, natural sound of flowing water. Listening to it has been shown to lower your heart rate and blood pressure and gently relax your whole body. Combining the magical sound of cascading water with the beauty of plants, Hydria Life now enable you to enjoy these same health and well-being benefits at home or in the garden. Get 10% off their rechargeable Hydria fountain at hydrialife.com when you quote code PLANT24 on ordering. That's PLANT24 on ordering.
The music for the Plant Based Podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.